Well, we're here with a brand new episode of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. And while that's a really long title, I call it the Blind Spots podcast. And let me tell you a little bit about what the podcast is all about. For me personally, in all the years and experience that I have, all the stuff that I've learned, what I found is that there's the stuff that you can see that's right in front of you, and there's the stuff that you kind of know you don't know, which is off to the side. But the stuff that's really going to hurt you the most is the stuff that's behind you, you never see, the blind spots. So, how do you increase, and this is again for me personally, how do you increase or decrease, I should say, the number of blind spots that you have? You talk to people who know a lot better than you do. And that's what this podcast is all about. As a company, we create data to support the blind spots, understanding the blind spots. So we bring experts, seasoned veterans, people who've been there and done that, so they can tell us about the blind spots that they have seen in business and how you can start to detect it. So today we've got a really exciting guest, Domenic Battistella. How are you, Domenic?
Doing fantastic tonight. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm actually really excited about sort of the story that you're going to tell us a little bit about. But before I get into that, I want to do a couple of things for housekeeping. I want to tell everyone some of the upcoming topics that we have. On June 10th, I've got Adam Seymour, who's going to talk to us about feelings that lead to a better bottom line. I feel like in the last couple of years, the idea of happiness and feelings and how people feel about how they're doing has been starting to bubble up to the top a lot more. Adam just recently wrote a book about that and how it adds to the bottom line. So something I think might be really interesting worth listening to. It's not this touchy feely stuff anymore. It actually kind of matters. On June 8th, Garland Vance is going to talk to us about the data behind better culture in pest control. He's done some work with some really large companies and shown he can talk to us about how culture affects the bottom line. On June 3rd, I've got Nadej Minois. She's going to talk about the compelling numbers behind building a diverse culture. I think a lot of people think about diversity as something that is a checkbox that they have to do. She's going to come in and talk to us about how diversity is actually a superpower for your culture. And here's some of the numbers behind it. It's not something you have to do, it's something you should do because it's a differentiator. It makes you better. But today, the topic that we're going to talk about with Domenic is this idea of taking care of your employees so they will take care of you. Gosh, I always say that 99% of business success is all about understanding your employees. So if you're not taking care of your employees, they're walking out the door. They don't feel like they need to take care of you. You're leaving money on the table. End of
Well,
story.
well, sure. I mean, there's a number of different reasons for that. I mean, one is the cost of replacing an employee. So you just look at the cost of hiring. So you have to take the time to recruit somebody, and the amount of time and money and attention it takes to do that. Go through the interview process and make sure that you're hiring the right person that one has the skills that you need to fill that position. Two, meets your company culture or has the right fit, as it were. And then once you get those people on, they have to learn their job, right? They have to learn how to do it. They might be experienced, but they have to learn how to do it in your company. So it takes a certain number of years, between 3 to 5 years, for them to actualize and become a profitable employee. Right. So if you're constantly turning over, you're hemorrhaging money out the back door. So you have to figure out ways not only to attract the right employees in this particular employment market where it's extremely difficult to find good people, but also make sure that you don't lose them on the other side. And as I'm sure you already know, company culture and how companies take care of their employees is a big reason why they stay or they go.
So I want to talk a little bit about your background here, and the reason
Sure.
why is because I want to make a connection to swimming here, and I think this is probably going to mean a lot to you, right?
Yes.
So look, I'm going to read a little bit here because I couldn't seem to remember all of it. Right now you're working for New York Life Securities. The industry is insurance. And you're a financial services professional, and you work with a lot of company owners.
That's right.
But your background wise, this is you're a second generational financial services professional, focusing on the business side. You've got a number of careers that you've been in, so you've kind of been morphing, reinventing yourself throughout the course of your life. 10 years nationally as a competitive U.S. swimmer. I think the notes that I'd written down here is hard work, persistence, coaching, and teamwork. Which, gosh,
Yeah.
that resonates in business too.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Let me tell them a little more
Sure.
about you because I want to make this analogy about swimming here, right? I'm dying to make this. 8 years as a championship policy debater in college and high school, public speaking. You did, gosh, you're a chef. You own restaurants, and then you've finally arrived on financial services. You've won numerous awards, quarter over quarter, year over year, in your local office at the larger company level. Your community connector and startup. I mean, we've connected on that level as well. So all these different dimensions to who Dominic is, but I want to go back to this whole idea of the team, right, and the loss of talent.
Right. Right.
So I got to imagine you've done some relays. And when you start to put that relay together, it's all about one person is the lead, one person is the anchor, and the people who have the leads in the chunks in the middle. I mean,
Sure.
that's really a kind of a team culture there, right?
Well,
And
absolutely.
if number two leaves, it throws off the whole dynamic of everyone, right? It takes a
Well,
little while to get that back into the flow and into the rhythm.
sure. Sure.
So is that the same thing you're saying here? That what happens in swimming in terms of loss of culture as a team, it's kind of like the same thing that you see in business as well.
Well, yes, yes. And so there's issues in the continuity of the team, right? Who's coming and who's moving on. So at the level that I was at the club level there, I mean, you're talking about anybody from ages 5 all the way to, you're talking about Olympic level swimmers who can range up into their 30s. So and you had people who, especially at that higher caliber, are following coaches, so they're following that culture that coach sets, and it may not filter down to that individual relay because there's mix and matching going on constantly to see what the best fit is or to create the best competitive situation for the team as a whole. I liken it more to the coaching staff sets the culture for the team, and then the leaders on the team, when talking about your team captains and your leaders at practice and the different practice groups, they then set the culture for the rest of the athletes. And when you do potentially lose a coach or you have a changeover in organization, you can lose a lot of athletes in that process. That's actually something that happened to me when I was a junior in high school. We lost our head coach. He was the former director of the University of Kentucky swimming program. He had coached multiple U.S. Olympic gold medalists, world record holders, and there was a change in the team, hence a change in the team culture. And during that change in the team culture, I actually felt disenfranchised within the forming of the new team culture and felt like it was time for me to move on and find something else to do, which was the transition from swimming to doing debate. But the reality of the situation is that leadership has a lot to do with a company culture and how those leaders interact with their employees, but on an entire company level, but actually on an individual level, is tremendously important to making sure employees stay engaged. And engagement is one of the top indicators of the success of a company culture.
Yeah, gosh, lots to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack. Yeah.
What you just said. Uh, um, I'm trying to think where I want to dig in first, and I think what's most interesting to me is this idea that. So I heard a saying once before that says people join a company for the vision, but they leave because of management, and
Sure.
that's exactly what you're saying, right? You come in because you want to be part of that swim team, for example. You like where the prospects of where it can go, where it can take you, because it's kind of aligned with what you personally want ultimately.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
This team is going to get me, is going to help me get to that mileage, that this mileage that I need out of this talent that I have. And
Right.
this can apply to anything that you do professionally. But when the team does not build a culture that is accepting of what your talents are, you start looking elsewhere and you start wondering what else is out there. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing from you. That's what happened when you lost the
Oh,
head coach, right?
oh, absolutely. And the funny thing is that's just as applicable today as a professional adult, right? As a professional person working in a Fortune 100 company, as it was when I was a teenager in competitive swimming. There's a lot that goes into, like we said before, the individual engagement. There's a lot that goes into understanding what it means to be a leader in an organization, and what makes a successful leader or manager. And I think one of those things is understanding that it's not about you, right? As the leader, it's not about you. It's about the people that are doing the work and how you support them, and understanding that you can't be in an achievement mindset as a leader in an organization, especially a sales organization. You need to understand that your greatest ability to impact people is in your ability to influence, right? So influence, stand behind, allow other people to take the credit and have the spotlight on them, and shower them with accolades, as opposed to, being the person that's a me person, right? That's if you do any reading on why, the best salespeople tend to make some of the worst sales managers, is because salespeople are so achievement oriented, and then when they make the transition into sales management, they don't let go of that achievement mindset. And understanding that they need to now be influential for all of the other salespeople, and allow them to become great achievers,
So
right? So
I'm gonna take one of the things that you said there, which I think I want to kind of tease out and maybe even polish one level or put another layer on. That is, you said it's as a manager, it's not about you. I think that might be the second half of the sentence, right? The
right,
first half of that sentence is, if you want to make it about you, it's not about you. As
right,
in, lift everyone else up first, and then all of a sudden they start saying, how can I serve your best interest? Because
right,
they want to continue to sort of repay that favors, is kind of what
right.
I'm hearing there, right?
The biggest thing that you can do is figure out uh, how to align your employees' goals with organizational goals. And a lot of times that has to be done on an individual basis, right? So you have to figure out what motivates a particular employee. Is this employee motivated by, and I go back to the love languages, right? It works as a relationship, in relationships. It works in employee employer relationships as well. What is that employee's language that connects with them? Is it words of affirmation? Is it gifts? Is spending quality time? Is it, is it allowing somebody to have the freedom to explore their own individuality? And some people just won't be good fits in the particular culture of a company organization, right? You think of the different types of organizations that are out there. You can have like clan or family culture type organizations, like a closely held family business, where the culture is held together by the fact that there's a strong loyalty given both to the company by their employees, and to the employees by the company, because they've been working together for so long. Typically, those companies are they're pretty insulated, and it takes a while for somebody to get integrated into a company culture like that. But once they are, they may never leave, because it feels like a family. So, in an organization like that, you may want to motivate people with offers of, like, catered lunch into the organization, or unlimited paid time off for employees. Then there's other cultures that are more individualistic or dynamic. Think of like a high-tech startup where somebody might be motivated by being able to work full-time from home, or be able to use work time for side projects to show their individual talents and in how excellent they are in providing dynamic solutions to problems that the company is trying to solve, but not doing it in a top-down dictated way. Then you have other organizations that are market or competition oriented cultures, like sales organizations, where experience or performance based benefits given can really create a high level of motivation for employees in those organizations. And then, of course, you've got more structural, hierarchical, or institutional type organizations such as government or hospitals, where there has to be tight regulations about how things are run. But in an organization like that, having a standardized set of benefits, but expanding them and making them available to everybody, so the people inside of that organization feel like, yes, we're all as an organization being appreciated with these large and generous benefits. I mean, I understand this firsthand. My fiance is an engineer with the federal government, and she has she can earn twice as much going into the private sector, but she doesn't, because her benefits package is so tremendous. It would be shooting herself in the foot to leave.
Yeah. So I wanted to make a couple of notes. Our good friend Jerry has chimed in.
Oh, hey Jerry, how you doing?
Hey Jerry, thanks for chiming in. And I would love Jerry throughout the course of this for you to give us your thoughts, and anybody else who's listening in and on the various platforms. We're on YouTube, LinkedIn Live, as well as on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn Live. So all three platforms. Anyone who's listening, love to hear where you're connecting from. Jerry, thanks for chiming in. Yes, and Domenic is such a great connector, and that's part of why I have him here, completely out of my own selfish interest. The the other thing is, I wanted to, I've got some sponsors. Gerald Bonner from Corralling Chaos is put an offer out there that anybody who chimes in the chat is open to an offer from him of getting a free culture analysis for their organization. If you're interested, just type interested in the comments, and I'll put you in touch with Gerald, and he will help your organization figure out what their culture is.
Yeah, Gerald's a great guy.
Gerald is a fantastic guy. I've learned quite a bit from him on culture as well. So I want to shift our conversation a little bit here.
Sure.
You work for New York Life. We're talking about culture. The topic is take care of your employees so they will take care of you. How does that all connect together? In my mind, you were talking about taking care of the team, right? And that's what you do. Tell me a little more about that. What do you see, and how do organizations not think about it before you talk to them?
Sure. So there's a couple of things. So some organizations you may go into, particularly small businesses, may not have set up any employee benefits. So that's the base level of thinking about it. Is we're just not going to do anything. We can't afford it. We're a small business. We're just starting up. Those are companies that are going to end up turning over quite a bit in an organization, particularly if they've been around for a little while. People are willing to give startup companies a bit more leeway in not having employee benefits. But if you don't have something up and running in 6 to 12 months, chances are they're going to go elsewhere, because there is no backup plan in this country. Even with the ACA, just on the healthcare side, that can be extremely expensive to try and pick up health insurance for yourself, and particularly if you have to provide it for a family. But if you've got an organization, say like a restaurant, right? This is something that I have a lot of experience with. Restaurants don't typically provide benefits for their employees, especially the hourly employees like cooks and wait staff. So you see a high level of turnover in those organizations. And right now, where people are unwilling to go back to work for low wages, that's something that's hurting a lot of restaurants, is they just don't have the staff to be able to serve their customer base. Then you get into companies where, yeah, they've got something just because they know they have to, right? But it's really an afterthought. So you recognize those companies by, all right, they're going to change their healthcare coverage every few years, going after whatever's the least expensive. You'll see benefits start to slowly roll back as premiums start to increase over time. You see more and more of a shift of the burden from the employer to the employee, whether that be in copay level or amount of contribution that the employer is providing towards the healthcare plan, as opposed to what the individual has to pay. A cutting off of contributions for additional family members outside of the employer. You will see 401k plans that don't have any match associated with them, or even retirement plans that aren't 401k related at all. They may be just employee contribution plans that have no ERISA oversight, so a lot of people aren't participating in those. There's just a lot of things you'll see there that appeal to lowest common denominator. Okay, what does this mean for our bottom line? But they're not looking at the back end as to how does this impact our bottom line on losing employees or not being able to attract employees. And then you start to get into organizations that have generous benefits. They're much better thought out, but maybe there are ways that they can improve them. And then you have companies who maybe they're not looking at what employees are really valuing and are trying to capture more of an image-based benefit, like putting in an employee game room or something like that. Well, do employees really care about that? Maybe they do if that's already their culture, but if it's a culture where it doesn't appear that the employer is really regarding how employees feel or listening to what they think and their feedback, if you install the ping pong table in the break room, that's going to ring really hollow, right? So one of the top things I think that employers can do, even with employee benefits, is listen to your employees. Don't just start something. If you're thinking about starting something, get employee feedback. And I'm not talking about having a survey, but maybe you have employee members on a benefits review board so that you can hear from the employee's perspective, what is it that they really value? What's their biggest concern?
So I think what I'm hearing from you there is don't try to make it good. Gosh, for myself, lots of times when I think I know the answers, I've gotten into this routine where as soon as I think I know the answer, I just go and try to ask the people that I think I know the answer for.
Sure.
And oftentimes I would say probably 50-50. I think I'm a reasonably smart guy, but 50% of the time I'm probably wrong.
Yeah.
Just because I think I understand it. And you're saying, hey, go set up an employee benefits council within your company. And it probably sounds a lot harder than it actually is. But bring them to the table and get them to tell you, well,
sure, you're gonna
about the ping pong table, and they can say, haven't used it in 2 years.
right. There's a benefit to having employee members review a benefits review board, particularly in larger organizations. So you have, maybe you have the human resource director or the director of the benefits program. You have somebody from executive management. You have somebody from implementation, and then you have a couple of voted members, 2 to 3 voted members of the workforce who are going to provide that voice of the employee. So everybody is represented in that room when you're looking at reviewing. And so the employee can hear, okay, this is what the bottom line concern is. These the cost of these benefits are going up, and this is how it's impacting the company. And maybe those employees can say, we're not so much concerned about, whether or not we have this platinum plated benefit because we never use X, Y, and Z. Maybe we can lower the cost over here. But what we'd really like to see is, a 2 to 3% match on our 401k. That would really make an impact on us. They could also be there to say, you guys are talking about implementing, or you've already given us unlimited paid time off. That's something you hear a lot as a buzz, as a hot employee benefit right now, especially in technology companies, unlimited paid time off. But oftentimes in these companies, there is a feeling that employees don't get to use that unlimited paid time off. So what good is offering unlimited paid time off if your employees are in a culture where they feel like they're going to be punished for utilizing the benefit that they have? Does that make sense? So as a matter of fact, even in companies where there's earned paid time off, right? So you get like 2, 3, 4 weeks off, a quarter of that time across all companies never gets used. So, right, what good is, I mean, it's almost a platitude to say unlimited paid time off, right? You have to make it so that people feel like they should, and they can, and they can feel comfortable taking that time off because they've earned it.
Yeah.
That's how people feel good about their benefits, is that it matches the culture of the company. And if your culture is you can't miss time, because if you do, you're not going to have further career opportunities, or you're not going to get the lead on that project that you've been talking about putting into place for the last year, just because you used your benefit. That's a problem, right? And employees recognize that.
Do you think leadership of these companies gets that, though, that they've got to invest? So I had a guest on a few weeks ago, and he told me about his father used to coach football, and one of the things that used to be, he said, what I call the old school way of running football, is when one of the football players, with all his helmet and his gear and all that kind of stuff, came to him after a practice for a little while. He used to come up to coach, say, "Coach, I need to get some water," and the coach was like, "Tough it out." Right. Today, that doesn't fly anymore, right? And there's plenty of evidence to prove that when the kid comes to you and says, "Hey, I need a drink of water," they probably should have had a drink of water 15 minutes ago, right? And performance is much better when they're well hydrated.
Well, there's that, but there's also the idea that who wants to give their all for a coach or company or a leader who they feel like doesn't have their back, right? If I feel like I can go to my leadership and my management and say, I have this issue, I need help, and know that person in leadership is going to help you get to solve that problem, you're going to do way more. You're going to go out of your way. You're going to give back 120% in effort to that little bit of effort that's given back. It's almost reciprocal. If somebody gives you something of value, you're going to go out of your way to provide as much as you can for that person. That's just, I mean, there's a ton of psychological data on that. I don't have the studies at the tip of my tongue, but I know I've read them. As a matter of fact, you can't even buy somebody involved in government contracting a $5 lunch, because the laws of reciprocity are so strong that could influence who you award contracts to. So it's literally illegal for somebody who could potentially be awarded a government contract to provide even more than a $5 gift of lunch to a federal employee.
Yeah, no, I did federal business development for 18 years, and that is a black and white line. But
absolutely, that's why.
And the way I think of it is, or saying that I use quite a bit, especially when I'm hiring employees, is I said, I can pay you for mine, but if I get your heart, I win. And
Sure.
the reason why is look, if someone goes to bat for you, you're more willing to go to bat for them. So if you think about it from the way you were saying earlier, if you're trying to think purely about achievement and productivity, you're only going to get maybe 60-70% of their total productivity, maybe 80% if you're a good enough taskmaster. But if you really want to get 110% out of them, they've got to do it, not you. They've got to want it,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And that's where the benefits come into play, right? You're taking another thing that I always think about is this idea that good leaders take all the hardship off the table, right? So the person can focus on what they want to do. If you're
Right.
putting a
Sure.
good program in place for them so that it takes care of them and their family or their future, their retirement, whatever the case may be, then they're focused on the job, not worried about whether they're going to get their kid into college. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, there was I think there was a MetLife study that was done recently where the number one concern amongst employees was financial stress. And, if you can do something to help remove that from the table, then that's hugely impactful. And a lot of the things that employees are worried about financial stress wise is, medical bills. It's, am I going to have enough? If I have an unexpected medical bill, am I going to have enough to fund me during retirement? Something like 37% or more of employees are already resigned to the fact that they're not going to be able to retire on time because their financial situation won't allow it. So taking some of those burdens, and you may not be able to, as an employer, be able to completely eliminate them, but doing what you can to lower that stress level and allow employees to actualize, because if your employees are focused on their home stress and their financial stress, they're not going to be
Right.
performing nearly as well as they could if that stress was minimized or removed altogether,
Now,
right? So go
I
ahead.
mean, I know for a fact, just to your point, I never ever get in a fight with my spouse or have a discussion or heated argument. Never, right?
Yeah,
But that carries into the day, right?
of
When we,
course.
when that, and that's what I'm hearing from you, right? That stuff carries over from your personal. But if you can take some of those things off the table altogether, they're focusing on getting what they got to get done, right? Which
Right.
is you winning, right?
Well, that's another thing that really will endear a leader to individual employees is taking the time to listen to what some of those problems are. So I'm having financial issues at home. They might not be able to do anything about it, but at least they're willing to listen. I'm having issues with my spouse. I'm going back to court for child support or child custody, and it's weighing on my mind. I just wanted to let you know that if an employee feels like their employer's open to hearing their issues and isn't one of those old school people that says, when you walk in the store, you check your problems there, right? That's not realistic in this world, because when we walk back to the house, we don't we don't check the workplace. These things that we carry in our pockets everywhere, our workplace goes with us everywhere. Well, so too does our home life, right? I mean, I get at least a half a dozen texts a day from somebody in my family wanting something. So I'm not able to just leave it at home and ignore it. I've got to deal with it. I got to deal with it at the time. So I've got to deal with work at the time when I'm at home. So the line between home life and work life has become so blurry, especially in the last year and a half since the COVID pandemic, because most people, if they're not still working from home at least part of the time, did work from home and are still accustomed to that, just obliterating of the delineation between work life and home life. It's all just life now. And so employers who have accepted that and understand that their employees have a home life, and a happy employee at home is going to be a much more effective employee here, they're there as counselors. There's just a lot of parts of being a leader now that are different from 30, 40 years ago. It's not just a top-down hierarchical management system. There's no more. I mean, even in the military, they've kind of softened quite a bit on that. So, yeah, the more you allow this generation, particularly, to uh, speak their piece and hear them uh, genuinely, you're going to get a lot more out
Yeah,
of the
and
employee.
you can have all kinds of exception with it, but it is what it is. But the one thing I want to do is I love stories, right? Tell me some stories about how you came into an organization, kind of where they were, whether they had benefits, they didn't have benefits, they knew they needed to do it. How did that how did that transition occur from when you first walked in the door? Tell me that fairy tale of where it ended.
Right. Well, here's an interesting one. So, uh, there's a company that I was working with, and the way I came to work with the company is uh, somebody who used to work for me when I was a chef. Her spouse works at this company. Now, she's in her mid 30s and just recently had her fourth open heart surgery.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And she was not able to qualify for any kind of life insurance, knowing that she needed it because there's a chance, even after a successful surgery, of not making it a significant amount of time. And, she's been touch and go several times because of her health conditions. Well, she's her husband's company is it's a small business. There's probably about 70 or so employees in the company, and they have, fortunately, some health insurance. They have a 401k with a small match, and that's nice, but not too much beyond that. They've got a little bit of life insurance, but just for the employee. And so I had a good conversation with them about something that I was able to bring to the table that provided guaranteed permanent life insurance to the individual employees through a payroll deduction from the employer. And it wasn't so much that, setting this up was something that was highly demanded by the employees, but because the employer was willing to institute this company-wide benefit, specifically to benefit not an employee, but a member of the employee's family who was able to get life insurance through the company because they picked up this program, that resonated tremendously with the rest of the employees in the company. I mean, so much so that we almost had universal participation in a program that was voluntary, right? Because they saw the value in what the company was bringing to the table. They said they're doing this for her, right? They're doing this for the employee, but they're actually doing it for the spouse. And because they're willing to listen and take this kind of action, even just to benefit one person, what happens if I need something? What are the lengths that the ownership and the leadership of this company is willing to go to make sure that my family is taken care of? So that did a lot in what was really, a very blue collar company. There's a blue collar workforce to it. There may have been some disconnection because there's a lot of crews that work outside of the main office, and they may not be completely connected to what leadership is doing at all times. But that story went around, and everybody realized, okay, they're dedicated to our best interest. It's
And
not just doing what they have to do because they feel like they need it, or else they're not going to be able to hire people, but they're doing this because they listened to somebody and
and
they
did
reacted.
and did this cost the company a lot to do this?
Quite honestly, it didn't cost the company anything.
So I mean, they got the juice out of the orange without even a squeeze. I mean, for
Right.
lack of a better way to put it, right? I mean, they got all this positive goodwill
Sure.
within their company. All these people who went home saying, "Damn, I'm happy I work for this company
Yeah.
because of this story of what happened for one person's spouse."
Yeah, exactly. And I'll tell you what, that employee is never going to leave this company.
Oh yeah, right.
So, those are the types of, and just a little change and a little bit of listening goes a long way for how people feel about the company that they work for.
So tell me another story. That was a good one. I actually quite like that one. Tell me that one seems like that one's probably a little less run of the mill. Where do most companies start, and where do they end up?
Most companies just want to. It starts with usually ownership. I want to do something for my employees, but I don't know what to do.
Okay.
Right? I haven't had this conversation. I've been afraid to have this conversation. Usually that's a smaller company. You're talking about maybe 10 to 20 employees. Typically, you're having that conversation, and the majority of the workforce of the company is just outside of the room. And so I have a conversation with the business owner, and I say, bring your secretary in, ask her what she wants.
Yeah.
Bring bring your bring a couple of your techs in, ask them what they want, and based upon that, you're gonna we can direct you into the types of programs that are going to do best for you to keep those employees engaged, right? Does is this the type of workforce where you've got a number of people that have spouses that they're utilizing the employee benefits that the spouse has at another company? Well, maybe the solution is some kind of bonuses. Take the money that you would have spent on the group benefits, because already everybody's already got their stuff taken care of, and put that into increasing compensation in some way or another. Or is there another thing you can do? Maybe they don't have those, and people are looking for retirement savings, or they are in a position where they're going to get 100% of anything that they have through the employer. Let's set up something comprehensive so that the employee can get everything that they need through you, right? So it really depends on what the situation is. And again, I always go back to, a good leader is going to ask his people for input. His or her people, excuse me. I don't mean to be
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I
exclusive.
love that, and that goes back to kind of what I was again, what I think of as a good leader is always trying to understand the story that is happening in the organization, and try. I mean, as a company, my company, we're always trying to provide the data that shows you what are the effective and ineffective things. Now, if an
Sure.
employee is doing something that's very effective, they're a fantastic technician, they're a fantastic supervisor, salesperson. That's great. Instead of I made the mistake. I shouldn't say the mistake. I had a revelation, I should call it. Right, the one time I asked them, an advisory board or a panel, said I've got these really key employees and I don't want them to ever leave. What am I going to do? Do I hire a second? And they said, you're asking the wrong question. I was like, well, what is the right question? They said, what are you doing to make sure that they feel loved by you? Because if they feel loved by you, they're not going to leave. So
That's
don't
right.
worry about hiring a second person. Worry about spending 5 more minutes with them every day, or 5% of their salary that you're probably throwing into health benefits somewhere they're not using because they're getting it from their spouse's plan. Put it
Right.
into saying, hey, let me help you pay off your student loan. Right.
Right. That may be a thing. Right. Or hey, let's start creating. You've got a kid that's going to go to college in 5 years, and you want them to go to college. Let's create a some kind of a deferred compensation bonus program for you, where every year we're going to set this money aside, and when it's time for your kid to go to college, you're going to have this lump sum of money that you're just going to be able to drop into it, and maybe that's what they need on an individual basis.
I mean, think
Right.
about
It
it.
goes back to those. It goes back to those love language conversations that we were having earlier. It's like,
Yeah.
what is it that's going to motivate that employee the best? And when you look, I know you were talking earlier about what is looking at the data as to what makes an effective manager, what makes an effective technician. Maybe you also have the conversation with those really effective people and ask, why? Why are you so effective? What is it that motivates you to be this effective? Are you self-motivated? Do you have a better connection with the company? What is it that has driven you to be like this? And see if there's a way to potentially replicate it. You may not be able to replicate it the exact same way with everybody else, but find out what happened that caused them to be such a high performing individual with this company, because they may have been at a different company before and not been so high performing, but things changed here. What is it about it that's making you this high performing and somebody else maybe not so?
My poor kids have heard me say for probably the better part of their whole life, the most important word in the world, why?
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Just understand why.
that's another thing that we talk about quite a bit at New York Life, is putting the why before the what. Correct? Because if you're think about getting young children to want to brush their teeth, right? You don't say brush your teeth because if you don't, you're going to dot dot dot, right? Or whatever the consequence is, or ultimately your teeth are going to fall out of your head. You could say, to one kid, hey, you know how you always want your breath to smell good and your teeth to be white? Yeah. Well, why don't you go brush your teeth? If you brush your teeth every day, twice a day, you'll make sure that happens. The other child, might say, hey, the last time we went to the dentist and you had a cavity and you had to get a Novocaine shot and a filling, didn't you hate that? Yeah. Well, if you brush your teeth every day, twice a day, that won't happen to you again. So you find the right motivation, you find the right why for each individual, you put that before what it is that you want them to do, and you're going to get a lot better compliance than going the other direction.
So I've been jotting down here. I don't know if you've noticed throughout the course of this, I'm always jotting notes.
Of course.
I got a couple of blind spots kind of already sort of give me a little bit of a tour of our conversation. I want to work through this because I think there's some things that'll come up that I didn't even get a chance to really touch on as we've been going through it. So number one that I heard from you is coaches set the culture for the team. And we were talking about swimming there. Number two is the biggest challenge is aligning individual interests with the company interests, and it needs to be custom per person. And I think what I heard from you that I don't think was necessarily teased out there was it doesn't have to be that complicated because you may already have the structure to do that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Number three is no benefits as a company means high employee turnover. So if you and I may take that one step further. You may have benefits as a company, but if you haven't, see number two just above that, if it's not tuned and tailored you have a ping pong table. That's a fantastic benefit, but they don't care, right? So if you have high employee turnover, you may not have the benefits that really appeal to them. Right?
Correct.
Number four is employees help steer the benefits for the company. Get the employees to
get input.
Yeah, get that. Ask them why it matters to them, because they may have that ailing parent or God forbid, a child with a chronic condition. That's their why. That's what drives. That's what gets them out of the bed every day, and that's why it comes to work. If you can tap into that and help them solve their problem, holy crap, they're going to go out of their way for you, right? Just like the spouse, right? The example you gave.
That's right.
I heard number one concern of employees is financial stress, and 37% don't think they will retire on time. If you can say, hey, let me get, and maybe in a deferred compensation, hey, the longer you stay here, the more I'll throw towards that fund. They don't want to leave because there's a cash kitty that's going to help them get closer to that retirement.
That's a big deal for people, especially if you have experienced employees that you don't want to lose to somewhere else. That you can, we sometimes refer to them as golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
Right. You're keeping people there, but you're doing it. They want to stay. You're not forcing them to stay, but they've got something that is a pot of gold at the end of their rainbow, and understanding that in addition to what they've contributed, here's some things that you've contributed to their retirement security that they would not otherwise have with another employer, even if maybe their employer kicks in an extra percent or two to their into their 401k in the form of a match. Is that better than providing a cash bonus that's going into a whole nother pot, right?
So, credit cards do a fantastic job of this with points, right? I mean,
Right.
I know I have got credit cards that I don't want to get out of because I can still go get that Lowe's or Home Depot gift card with all the points that are there, or a free night at Marriott because I've got a
Right.
Marriott rewards card, and I haven't closed that card for 4 years because of it. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Right. And when you could probably go get a better card with a better
Yeah,
rate,
that's right.
but you just can't let go of the things that I've earned.
Yeah, that's right. And it's never easy for me to just get at it, so I'm still using the card, right?
Well, I mean, it's the same principle behind the rewards cards at grocery stores and things like that. I mean, you go to Harris Teeter and I've got enough points to get $1 off a gallon gas. You're going to keep shopping there, even though you could save, $100 a week by going to Walmart instead.
Or when they tell you come in on Tuesdays and you get an extra nickel a quarter off or whatever, you always
Exactly.
go on Tuesday, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Gosh, what a fantastic way to drive behaviors. So using benefits, maybe maybe a deferred compensation. If they're already using benefits somewhere else, you're essentially taking that money and investing it somewhere for them. They're not using it. Why don't you redirect those funds to paying off their student debt because that's what's weighing on them as part of that
Well, you,
financial stress, right?
well, you could do that, right? Maybe another piece of stress is, they want a life insurance policy that's permanent, but they can't afford to pay for it on their own. So maybe part of the benefit for a particular employee is to do what's called a split dollar uh, program, where essentially the employer pays for a certain percentage of their life insurance, and then the employee pays for a certain percentage of their life insurance, and then after either the policy's paid off or the employer leaves the company, or the employee leaves the company, they can take a certain amount of the cash value that's built up in the policy and pay back the employer, and then the employee owns the policy free and clear. Either that, or set up another payment structure where the benefit would eventually pay the employer back for what they've contributed to it. Regardless, it's just another, like, hey, this is a unique thing that looks at what it is that I really need as an employee. It's not something that you would come to an employee and say, hey, I'm going to offer you this. Well, what the employee says, yeah, I don't want that. Again, that's the same thing as the ping pong table from before. But if it's something that the employer knows about and the employee knows about, and it's something that they're in harmony with, as far as this would be good for both of us, that's something that they could do. It's just one suggestion among many, as unique ideas and ways to compensate your employees in a different way that's going to create loyalty. And it all starts with listening to your employees and what it is that they need and what their concerns are. And again, going back to that open door policy for leadership that understands that the workplace home line doesn't exist anymore, and what's a problem for the employee at home is a problem for the employer at work, and they just need to have that empathetic mindset of listening to the employee and helping them get to their best version of themselves, especially when they're in the workplace.
So this process of going through and doing this, I mean, I heard you say a little, maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, you said, smaller company might be fearful of having this conversation. They've been thinking about it for a while. It's been kind of rattling around in their head for a little while, and they finally end up doing it. Why are so tell kind of dispel why they shouldn't wait? Because it seems to me, if you want to get 110 for another person I talk about is for every $100,000 you spend in payroll, what percentage of that money are you getting back? With with stats around disengagement, 74% of employees are disengaged in the workplace. Well, for every $100,000 you're spending in payroll, you're only getting $26,000 back. That's a terrible
Yeah.
investment, right?
Well,
So
sure.
why don't you get 110, right?
Right.
So if you can put benefits in place to get 110 out of 100, well, that's a great investment, right?
Well, again, it has to be the right benefits. So that has to
Yeah.
start with the listening. I would love to sit here and say, hey, if you came to me and had a conversation and we put every single employee benefit we could in place for your employees, I would be a very happy guy because I'd make a ton of money, but it wouldn't necessarily be the best thing for your employees and it wouldn't necessarily be the best thing for your business. So it's got to start with that listening ear from you as the leadership of the organization. But that's the first thing I tell my clients when I have these conversations with them is, what do your employees want? Did you ask? Because we need to find out. And it doesn't just mean like, hey, if we started this program, would you be interested? It's, hey, what's most important to you? What do you value? Right? What do you value as a group? What do you value as an individual? And doing things to take care of making sure that the company is addressing those important values that those employees have. And it may not be everything that I have to offer. It may not be anything that I have to offer, but at least I can guide that client to the question, which is, what motivates you? What's most important to you, Mr. or Mrs. Employee? Right. And that's where it really starts. It's got to. And putting a ton of benefits in place isn't necessarily, like you said, the right answer. It could be just one or two, but those one or two have a much bigger impact than just, to use a chef's term, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to go down this journey of trying to get your employees to, going back to that sentence we talked about, the first part and the second part, if you want to achieve your aim, you gotta, it's not about you, right? It's about serving others. If
That's
you
correct.
believe that first, right, as the first foundation, then the second part is, if you want to get your employees to care about you, you got to show that you care for them authentically, realistically, sustainably, that you care about them, right? You want to listen, you want to help, you want to take that friction off the table in their lives, and you want to help them put it to a side so they can focus on what they're here to do. And if they're at that point where they're willing to ask their employees why, what does it matter to you, right? Once they can ask them those questions, that's when they come and see you. Because when you can put this, then you can help them, counsel them on the
I'll,
structures to put in place.
well, yeah, so I would be glad to have the conversation when any employer is, rattling around the idea in their mind. I've been thinking about this for a while. I don't know where to start. And I'm gonna redirect them. They'll call me and I'll have the conversation, but I'll always say, ask the question first. What what do they want? What do they value?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be most beneficial for both of us, right? Both the employer and myself, because that'll help me understand what's going to create the best possible program.
Well, I want to finish up here in one last note. I wanted to say thanks to Jerry for chiming in, and I had to reread while I was paying attention to Dominic, reread your chat once or twice to make sure I understood what you said. And the question that you asked here is, what does Domenic Battistella do that makes him think that made him such a great connector and relator to employees? What is it, Dominic? What's the secret sauce there?
I think it's pretty clear. It's listening to what people need and trying to figure out how to make that happen for them. And I talk to a lot of people each and every day, and give them, in the course of our conversation, try to give them what they're asking for, regardless if that has anything to do with my business or not. And I think that I've ended up talking myself out of more business, because, to be quite honest with you, I'm not that great of a salesperson. I think people say, no, of course you're great, right? But I talk myself out of business every day, but I think that garners me more respect, because I'm not out here just trying to sell everybody anything that I can. I'm out here trying to help people find a way to get to where they want to be, and that may or may not be by doing business, right? It may just be giving them a name of somebody that they're looking to connect with, or helping mentor them through a problem that maybe I've had or am able to look at from another perspective, regardless of what it is, I'm always willing to take the time, have the conversation, and keep my active listening there, and not just wait for my turn to talk again. That's that loses more people than anything. Just be genuine, listen, and do for other people.
Well, thanks for the question, Jerry. Thanks for chiming in, and Dominic, I appreciate you sharing so much. I usually only get about 3 or 4 blind spots, and maybe I just heard a lot of stuff here, but I got 7 out of them today. 7.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
7 nuggets today. So lots of
Excellent.
lots of learning today. Thanks, Dominic.
Well,
I appreciate the time.
I'm glad I could be here.